City Clerk, are there any further speakers?
No, there are not.
Thank you so much. Okay, so it might be helpful to have the questions up. I know they're on two separate slides, so that's a little bit challenging, but I think I'm going to go ahead and start because I know that this is an issue that I am interested in very much, and I appreciate the conversation. I think it's really important that we have this as a community, and this is a conversation that's happening all throughout the United States, as many of you are probably aware. And as someone who studied history in depth at Cal Poly and other places, I have a keen interest in this conversation. And I think that I just want to start by saying that I think for so many reasons that I will illuminate momentarily, that to me the only policy that makes sense for this community moving forward is have a policy, if we are going to have monuments, that celebrate ideas and ideals and not individual people for so many reasons. Number one, anyone worthy of a monument would not want one in the first place. This is such a complex issue, and why would we step into lifting up individual people who are undoubtedly, as we all are, complex, flawed people that have moments of genius and brilliance, no doubt, but also moments where we make incredibly bad decisions. And yes, we are in the context of our historical moment, but that doesn't excuse us for being racist, misogynist, homophobic, etc. And a monument, I disagree with Mr. Papp, who I know has more expertise than I do, so I recognize that. But a monument is implicitly lifting up someone to celebrate. And the last speaker illuminated perfectly the problematic situation that we create when we lift up someone who is complex and problematic, and then we have this sidebar of which, if you look at the history of the United States, you will recognize that almost anyone at this point that we would lift up, we're going to have a sidebar. The plaque sidebar situation is going to be a policy unto itself. Sure, this guy did this and that, but also he was a racist, misogynist person. Sidebar. But that's not a sidebar. That's important. That's essential to who this person was, even though I recognize that we have compassion for the fact that they were in the context of their time. We see across the United States what goes wrong when monuments become controversial or recognized fully in their moment as the controversy that they ultimately always were. This has led in some communities to violence and even death. Why would we invite that into the community of San Luis Obispo? I think it's essential that we know our history. That is absolutely true. But cultural heritage often, the celebration and lifting up of our cultural heritage often contributes to discrimination and lifting up of racism and all of these things, because the history of the United States is rooted in white supremacy. So most of these folks that we're talking about lifting up are going to be rooted in that history. And so how are we going to deal with that? This guy was theoretically a great guy and he stopped by, but also he was rooted in white supremacy. That's a pretty uncomfortable sidebar for people that are visiting our community. Also, we're talking about putting these in public spaces, and we're talking about a lot of money, and yes, a lot of it's donated, but no doubt the city would have to be responsible for some of the maintenance, so thank you for that question. What is that juxtaposition when we have a sculpture in a public space in the potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars when you include the construction, installation, and maintenance, in the context of our ever-growing and ever-struggling community that is living unsheltered in these exact same spaces? Is that another sidebar? Is that a second plaque? How many plaques are we going to need on the side of these monuments to explain why we're lifting up people in these spaces and in these ways, and in this moment in time in 2019? So my strong feeling on this is that our policy, I think, to reflect the true values and heart of this city, and to reflect the true values and heart of the future of what it is to celebrate what is good about our communities and what is good about this country is to not lift up individuals at all, but instead to celebrate ideas and the ideals that make this community what it is. Councilmember Stewart.